Okay. Seems that reaction videos are the hot item right now. So I thought I'd start doing my own. Uh, Mostly, I'm going to be looking at videos that people are making about things from the mid to late 20th century, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. Uh, and that's where I'm going to put my focus on. Like this video here is 30 American gadgets from uh, from the 70s and 80s nobody remembers anymore. Well, I got news for them. So let's get into this, shall we?
Was a smell to new things back then. Not just the plastic, though there was always plastic. Something underneath it. Something that smelled like promise. Like you had found the answer to a problem you didn't even know you had. You carried it in through the front door and set it on the counter and stood back and looked at it. And for a moment, the whole house felt different. You were ahead of the curve. You had the thing. It didn't always work out that way, of course. Some of those things lasted 2 weeks before they went into the hall closet. Some of them made it a few years and then disappeared so completely that you nearly forgot they existed. A few of them were genuinely ridiculous, and you knew that even then, even as you were buying them. And you bought them anyway because the commercial made it look so easy and so necessary and so wonderfully modern. This is the story of those things. The objects that came into your life with such confidence and left so quietly you barely noticed they were gone. The gadgets on the counter, the devices in the drawer, the machines that were going to change everything. You remember them now. You remember exactly where you kept them. Number one was the electric can opener. Not the old wall-mounted kind.
Still have that, or not that particular one, but I still have one. In fact, I just bought it a few months back. It's red, works really well. You just have to remember that periodically you have to take the blade portion off and clean it. And the same with the little gear motor, because paper and stuff gets gummed up in there and it stops turning the can like it's supposed to. But otherwise, they are great to have.
That had been in kitchens since the 1950s, the new countertop version, the one that sat on the counter like it owned the place. It was avocado green or harvest gold, and it had a little blade that spun the can around automatically. And when you first brought it home, you opened every can in the pantry just to watch it work. Your mother thought it was excessive. She had been opening cans by hand for 30 years and saw no reason to stop. But you had a household to run and a schedule to keep, and this was 1974, and the future had arrived right there on your kitchen counter. It broke, of course. The blade got dull and the mechanism jammed, and after about 2 years, it started shredding the lid instead of cutting it. You went back to the hand opener. Your mother said nothing. She didn't have to. Number two was the electric knife.
They'll have one of those too. It's tend used for carving brisket or a ham. Briskets are and hams is what it usually gets used for.
Oh, the electric knife. Beautiful, ridiculous, magnificent invention. Two serrated blades that vibrated against each other at high speed, plugged into the wall, designed to carve a turkey in half the time of a regular knife. You got one as a wedding gift or a Christmas present, and you kept it in its special case in the back drawer and brought it out exactly once a year at Thanksgiving. The sound it made, that high buzzing whir that sent children scrambling to the far end of the kitchen. Your husband held it like he was diffusing something.
Far end of the kitchen, my ass. You heard that sound. It meant dinner was about ready to go on the table, and you came running for the table. Good grief! I don't know where these people get their information from, but damn.
The turkey came apart in slightly uneven slices, but everyone pretended they were perfect because the electric knife had been used and therefore the meal was a success. By 1990, they were all in drawers across America, waiting. Most of them are still there. Number three was the fondue pot. If you were married in the 1970s, there's a strong chance you received.
Have one. Mine's electric though, So I don't have to worry about the fuel issue that they bring up on here.
Received at least one fondue pot as a wedding gift, possibly two. The orange enameled cast iron kind with the little burner underneath that used canned fuel and produced an unsteady blue flame that made everyone slightly nervous. There was something genuinely lovely about fondue, though. The way everyone gathered close around the pot, the little colored forks with the colored handles so you knew which one was yours, the rule about dropping your bread, you had to kiss everyone at the table, or do
Never heard that rule. Never heard of any rule about regarding dropping your bread, other than just pick it up and clean up your mess.
a dare, depending on who was playing. Someone always dropped their bread on purpose. You made cheese fondue and chocolate fondue, and for a brief period in about 1977, you made beef fondue, which involved a pot of hot oil that absolutely terrified every sensible person in the room, but produced the most delicious little bites of beef you had ever eaten in your life. The fondue pot went into the cabinet sometime in the early 1980s.
Yeah, the hot oil one, dipping your meat in hot oil, that's actually, if I'm not mistaken, uh, comes from Japan, where they do that. I think it's Japan, one of the Asian countries, anyways. Um, I'm pretty sure. Uh, but yeah,
You told yourself you would get it back out. You didn't get it back out. Number 4 was the salad spinner. The salad spinner arrived in American kitchens in the mid 1970s like it had been waiting its whole life to be invited.
the only place I've ever seen a salad spinner is in commercial applications. Uh, I've never seen one in home use.
A plastic bowl with a colander insert and a pull cord mechanism that spun the colander around at speed, flinging water off lettuce leaves through centrifugal force. It was exactly as dramatic
It's pronounced centrifugal. Good grief.
as it sounds. The pull cord ones made a tremendous racket. The push button ones were quieter but less satisfying. Children loved being allowed to operate the salad spinner. It was the closest thing to a carnival ride available in the kitchen, and it produced something useful, which made it even better. Salad spinners still exist, technically, but the ones from the 1970s, those enormous, rattling pull cord contraptions that sounded like a small helicopter landing on your counter, those are gone, and they were genuinely wonderful. Number 5 was the Veg-O-Matic.
It slices, it dices, it makes julienne fries.
You saw it on television first. The commercial was impossible to ignore.
And television commercial was the only place I ever saw one of these things. I never saw one in any of my friends' houses or any of my family members' houses.
A man in a suit standing behind a counter chopping vegetables at inhuman speed with a device that looked like a cross between a mandolin and a torture instrument.
Mr. Popeil, Mr. Popeil.
Potatoes, cucumbers, all of them disappearing into perfect slices in seconds. And then the voice. It slices, it dices. You bought one. Everyone bought one. The Veg-O-Matic was the promise of efficiency delivered in a box. And in 1970, efficiency was the great American religion. You were going to cook faster. You were going to waste less time. You were going to have dinner on the table by 5:30 and still have energy left over. The Veg-O-Matic sliced well enough. The dicing was debatable. The cleaning took longer than just chopping the vegetables by hand, and after the third or fourth time you took it apart to wash all the little blade inserts, you started to question the whole arrangement. But you kept it. You kept it for years because you had paid
Tell me
money
in
for
chat
it,
if you
and
remember
because
any
it
of
was
these
the kind of thing you kept.
items.
Somewhere in a box in a garage in America, there is a Veg-O-Matic waiting to be discovered. Number 6 was the electric yogurt maker. The yogurt maker was a creature of the late 1970s, born from the era of health food and natural living and the conviction that everything store-bought was somehow inferior to the thing you could make yourself.
It
It
is.
was a small plastic cylinder with a heating element inside, and you filled it with milk and starter culture and set it in a warm corner of the kitchen overnight, and in the morning you had yogurt. The
It had
yogurt
its
was
own
thinner than
heating
stone
element,
yogurt.
so there was
It
no
had a
reason to be in a
particular
warm corner.
tartness that took some getting used to. You ate it with honey because the health food store said honey was better than sugar, and you told everyone who would listen that you made your own yogurt now, and most of them looked at you the way people look at someone who has taken up an unusual hobby. The yogurt makers disappeared around 1983. The health food movement continued without them.
Actually, you
Store
can still
yogurt
buy
got
brand new
better.
ones.
The little machine went into the closet, and then into the donation box, and then into whatever comes after that. Number 7 was the CB radio. If you lived through the mid-1970s, you remember the CB radio the way you remember a fever.
70s and
Intensely,
80s.
vividly, and with a slight sense of disbelief afterward. For about 3 years, from roughly 1975 to 1978, CB radio was the most exciting technology in America. Truckers had been using them for years, but after the gas crisis of 1973 and the nationwide 55-mile-per-hour speed limit, everyone got one. You got one. Your neighbors got one. Your
Everybody
brother-in-law
got one.
installed one in his Oldsmobile and spent an entire summer talking to strangers on the highway. There was a whole language, a handle, which was your CB name. Your husband's was Nighthawk or Lone Star or something equally serious. A 10 code for everything, 10-4 for OK, 10-20 for location, 10-33 for emergency.
10-100, you got to
Truckers
take
were
a
the
peek.
real poets of the CB. They had words for everything. A Smoky was a police officer. A bear in the air was a police helicopter. A plain wrapper was an unmarked police car. You talked to people you would never meet. You warned each other about speed traps. You helped someone find a gas station. It felt briefly and genuinely like community, a whole invisible network of voices on the highway looking out for each other. And then it ended. As suddenly as it came, the CB craze collapsed. The channels got crowded and noisy. People moved on. The radio stayed in the car for a few years, unused, and then it came out and went into the garage, and by 1982, it was gone from most American lives as completely as if it had never existed.
Lies! Lies, I tell you. We were using ours in 1987, 88. A whole bunch of us, a bunch of friends that we'd get together. There was one spot in Huntsville, Alabama, on the north side of town. It's called we called it the number one sitting spot. And from that spot, you could work some outlandish, what was called a skip, where the radio signal was bouncing off the ionosphere, and you could talk to people like from Huntsville, Alabama. We were talking to people in California, even though a CB is only supposed to have a range of like 4 or 5 miles max. But if you could get in the right spot and get a good skip working, you could talk to people hundreds and thousands of miles away. And we were doing that in like 86, 87. And so, yeah, whoever wrote this is so full of themselves and full of crap here. It's not true. CBs continued on. In fact, I've got a lot of friends that still have their CBs in their vehicles and still use them today.
Number 8 was the 8-track player.
Now, I want to know if he did that on purpose. Made the 8-track the 8th spot in this video. But, yeah, I miss my 8-track. I do. I really do.
The 8-track tape was not a graceful piece of technology. It was thick and heavy and clicked loudly when it changed tracks, sometimes right in the middle of a song. The click was jarring. The click was unavoidable. The click happened on every single tape you owned, always at the worst possible moment, always during the part of the song you loved most.
Not if you
But
recorded
you loved
properly.
it anyway. You loved it because it meant music in the car, real music, your music, without having to wait for the radio to play something you liked. You kept a box of tapes in the back seat. Fleetwood Mac, the Bee Gees, Elton John, Eagles. The cases cracked if you left them in a hot car, and you left them in a hot car constantly and they cracked anyway,
Usually in a
and you
black
loved them
box.
still. The 8-track was replaced by the cassette, which was smaller and lighter and didn't click. You were glad for the cassette. You missed the 8-track more than you expected to. Number 9 was the waterbed.
Oh,
There are certain objects from
oh,
the 1970s that seem, in retrospect,
oh, I missed my waterbed. Oh, that was the most comfortable, best sleep I ever got was on that waterbed. Oh my God, it was great. 6 wasn't too bad either, but it was definitely excellent for sleeping. I mean, 'cause it just formed right to your body. It was great.
like they emerged from a collective fever dream, and the waterbed is at the top of that list. A vinyl mattress filled with water sitting on a wooden platform frame with a heater element underneath to keep the water warm. You fell asleep to the gentle motion of gentle waves. You woke up to the gentle motion of your husband turning over at 3 in the morning, which registered on your side of the bed as something close to a small nautical event. The waterbed was the height of sophistication in about 1975. The television commercials showed it
Even
in rooms with shag
1986,
carpet and mood
mid 80s, where
lighting,
they were really
and the
big too.
implication that owning one said something very specific about you and what you valued in life. You got one, or you wanted one, or you visited someone who had one and lay down on it for approximately 45 seconds before deciding you either loved it deeply or would never sleep again.
You laid
They
down
were
on one of those
very
things for
difficult to
45
move.
seconds. You were
If
out
you ever
cold.
helped a friend move a waterbed, you have never forgotten it and never forgiven them. The waterbeds are mostly gone now. A few specialty places still sell them, but the idea of them, the beautiful, impractical, perfectly 1970s idea of sleeping on water in your own bedroom, that belongs to a specific moment in American life that will not come back. Number 10 was the lava lamp. The lava lamp was not strictly a 1970s invention. It was
No,
born in England in the 1960s, but it reached its fullest American expression in the 1970s, sitting on a shelf in a bedroom or a den, cycling through its slow, meditative movements while someone listened to album rock in the dark. The colored wax inside melting and rising and falling and pooling at the bottom and rising again. The shapes it made were different every time. You could watch it for 20 minutes and not notice. You did watch it for 20 minutes. The lamp
or
made a
longer.
slight warmth when it was on for a long time, and the room it sat in always felt a little softer because of it. Lava lamps came back, technically. You can buy one now. But the ones from then, the originals, the ones that sat in rooms that smelled like incense and carpet and something cooking somewhere down the hall, those were a different object altogether. They belonged to that particular light. They belonged to that particular time. Number 11 was the Betamax. The great videotape war of the late 70s and early 80s was fought in living rooms across America, and most people didn't even know they were in it. You went to the electronics store, or you were taken there by a husband or a father or a brother who had done research, and you stood in front of two different machines, the Betamax and the VHS. Both recorded television, both played back movies you could rent from a store. The salesman had opinions about both. Betamax was considered the better machine. The picture was sharper. The tape was
Beta
smaller.
had a very
The
much
people who cared
better
about
picture
such
quality.
things cared about Betamax the way they cared about the better speaker or the more accurate watch, with a particular quiet intensity. But VHS had longer recording time. VHS had more movies available to rent. VHS was cheaper. And slowly, then all at once, VHS won. The Betamax machines became the technology that lost. The people who had bought them felt a specific kind of frustration. They had made the right choice and been punished for it by a market that didn't care about right choices.
Actually,
If you
beta
had a
is still
Betamax, you know
used in
exactly what this
television.
felt like. You held on to those tapes longer than was reasonable.
Television
You knew
industry
in the end it
uses
was
either
over.
Betamax beta or
Number 12 was the home
3/4 inch.
intercom system. The home intercom was a beautiful idea. A box mounted on the wall in the kitchen with matching boxes in the bedrooms and the den and the garage, all connected by wires running through the walls. You pressed a button and spoke, and your voice came out of every speaker in the house simultaneously. Dinner is ready. That was what it was for, mostly, calling children from their rooms with
Yeah, replace the old triangle bell. Ding, 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 ding.
Some of the fancier ones had a radio built in, so you could pipe music through every room. You can have the same song playing in the kitchen and the living room, the bedroom at once. The children used the intercom for purposes it was not designed for, pressing the button at 2 in the morning and whispering something nonsensical into the speaker, listening to what was happening in the kitchen from the privacy of a bedroom. The intercom heard everything. The intercom knew things. Wistfully, cell phones made the intercom unnecessary. When everyone has a phone in their pocket, you don't need a box on the wall. But there was something about the intercom, something about the way a voice came through it, a little flat and a little close at the same time, that felt like a house talking to itself, like a home that knew where everyone was. Number 13 was the Polaroid camera. Not all Polaroid cameras failed. Brands survived in various forms. But the specific magic of the original Polaroid, the one where you pressed the button and a white square of photo paper slid out the front of the camera and you held it by the edge, shook it, even though you were told not to shake
Yeah,
it.
never
Everyone
shake
shook
them.
it.
Never
Watch
shake
the
them.
image develop from nothing into something while you held it in your hand. That particular magic is gone. You
Shaking
shook it
them?
anyway.
Shake?
Everyone
Yeah.
shook it. The instructions said not to because shaking introduced air bubbles and could damage the image.
Not
But the
not only
image
air
was developing
bubbles,
right there in your
but
hand.
it could
You were
also
8
cause
years
streaking.
old, or you were 25, and you had just taken a picture of something important, and you could not possibly just stand still and wait. The photographs that came out of Polaroids had a quality to them that no other camera produced. A softness, a slight overexposure around bright things, a particular quality of color that made everything look a little like a dream. Your mother kept them in a shoebox. The shoebox is somewhere still. The picture of Christmas morning, the picture from your sister's birthday, the picture somebody took at the lake that summer, slightly blurry because someone was moving, the colors slightly too warm, the edges dark. There you are. There you all are. Number 14 was the typewriter
Good
correction
old
tape.
electric typewriter.
Typewriter correction tape was not a glamorous invention. It was a small spool of white tape coated with a chalky substance that you used to cover typing errors, and it came in a little plastic dispenser. And if you typed on an IBM Selectric or any electric typewriter in the late 1970s, you used it constantly. The correction tape was better than whiteout, which went on wet and smelled of something chemical and took too long.
Actually, the IBM Selectric, most of them had the correction tape built into it. So all you had to do is tell it, hit the delete button basically, and it would back over whatever you had just typed, and instead of using the black ink, we'd use the white correction film, and instead of having a line like that's like it's showing there, uh, it actually just covered up the black of the letter itself. It was a lot cleaner. And my dad had a Corona electric typewriter that had ink cartridges that you could change in and out, and you just had a correction cartridge that you could do the same thing as that right there.
Long to dry. The tape you simply pressed over the error and retyped. The correction was immediate. The correction was nearly invisible
They
if you were
do
careful.
still have
If
one
you
of
were
those
not careful,
tape
the
things.
letters were slightly raised, and anyone who read the page closely could see exactly where you had made a mistake, which was embarrassing in a professional correspondence. You kept the dispenser in the top drawer of the desk. You kept 2 because you always ran out when you could least afford to. The typewriter is gone from most desks now. The correction tape went with it, quietly, without ceremony, the way small necessary things always go. Number 15 was the answering machine. The first home answering machine machines were large and complicated and cost more than most people expected to pay for the privilege of not having to answer the telephone.
I think I paid like
They sat on a
$60 for my
shelf
first
near
one.
the phone or on the counter in the kitchen. And they had a cassette tape inside that recorded messages. And when someone called and you didn't answer, a recorded version of your voice told them to leave a message after the beep.
Now that
The
unit there
recording of your voice,
showed
that
the
was
micro
part that took
cassettes.
the most
The
time.
first answering
You recorded
machines
it and listened to it
used
and recorded it again because it
reel-to-reel
sounded strange
or
to you,
full-size
too
cassette
high
tapes.
or too fast,
Then they
or
went to the
somehow
micro
not the way you
cassettes, and
sounded
then it went
inside your
to
own
a
head.
combination of
Recorded it at
digital
least
and
4
tape,
times before you were
and
satisfied.
then just fully
The
digital.
messages people
No
got
tapes
were
at all.
different from texts. They
Now
had
you
a
got
quality
voicemail.
that texts cannot replicate. You could hear the pause before someone said what they called to say, the small breath before something important, the sound of a house in the background.
Plus also
a
the
television,
phone
a
company,
child's voice
when they
somewhere off to
first
the side.
introduced voicemail, you
Messages
could
had
have it
texture,
that way, and you
messages
didn't even
had
have to have one of
rhythm.
those machines.
Your mother's voice on the answering machine. You saved it. You saved it for years after she was gone because you couldn't bring yourself to erase it. Her voice saying your name, her voice saying she was just calling to check in. The machine that held it is long gone. The voice lives somewhere else now. Number 16 was the desktop calculator.
It's an
Not the
adding
small
machine.
pocket calculator that came later, the full-size desktop calculator that sat on a desk or a counter, about the size of a thick hardcover book with large plastic keys and a paper roll that fed through the top and printed every number you entered in faded ink. You tore off the tape and checked your addition. The tape was the record. The tape was the proof. These calculators were in every office and every kitchen in America from about 1972 onward. They calculated
Mine's
mortgage
in the closet.
payments and grocery budgets and tip amounts and school fundraiser totals. The keys made a satisfying sound when you pressed them, a solid, definitive click that told you the number had been entered and the machine had accepted it. The small electronic calculator made the desktop model obsolete, and then the phone made the small calculator obsolete, and now you calculate everything on a device that also plays music and takes photographs and knows exactly where you are at any moment. The desktop calculator sat on a desk and did one thing. It did it perfectly. Number 17 was the slide projector. The slide projector was the official keeper of family memory for 2 decades, from the mid-1950s to the mid-1970s.
I think I only
You
saw
loaded the
one
circular carousel with
looked like that,
35mm slides
with the screen on it.
squares of film
I've
mounted to
I've only seen
cardboard or
one like
plastic,
that.
and you set up the screen, the white fabric screen on the folding metal stand that always leaned slightly to the left, and you darkened the room, and you clicked through the summer. The click of the carousel advancing, the bright square of light on the screen, slightly too bright at first, and then the image resolving. The beach, the cousins, the birthday party, the Christmas morning from 3 years ago. Everyone leaning forward slightly, as if proximity would make the memory clearer. Someone always held the remote clicker, usually the father. Usually he advanced too fast or too slow, and someone always said, go back, when a particularly good one slid past. The room smelled faintly of hot light and the particular smell of photographic chemistry. The children fell asleep on the floor watching their own lives go by on the screen.
Actually, that smell was usually the smell of dust burning off the bulb.
The projector is gone. The screen is gone. But the boxes are somewhere. In attics, in garages, in the back of closets, with all those summers still inside them, waiting for a machine that no longer exists. Number 18 was the car phone. Not the cell phone, the car phone.
Yeah, it was a radio phone.
Telephone installed in the car itself, mounted in the center console or tucked under the dashboard, connected to the cellular network.
It wasn't cellular. It was radio, pure radio.
1980s, and having a car phone meant something very specific.
Because it was radio and not cellular, if you had a programmable scanner, like the old Bearcat scanners, you could listen in on people's phone conversations.
Bell in some parts of town, completely gone in others. You dropped calls on hills, you dropped calls in tunnels, you dropped calls for no apparent reason while driving through a perfectly ordinary intersection. But you made calls from your car. You called the office, you called your husband, you called your daughter to
And
say
paid
you were on your way,
exorbitant prices
and you
for
could hear
it.
the slight delay in her voice as the signal traveled its uncertain path through the air, and it felt like magic, even when it didn't work properly.
Yeah,
The
airtime
car
was not
phone
cheap.
became the brick phone, which became the flip phone, which became everything you carry now. But the car phone, that impractical, expensive, mounted to the dashboard car phone, that was the moment when you first understood that distance was going to be different from then on. Number 19 was the electric Rolodex.
Rolodex.
The standard
And the thing
Rolodex,
is,
the rotating card file
they never
with
once
progressive
show an
serial
actual
numbers,
electric
was a fine,
Rolodex in here.
sensible piece of
Only
office
manuals.
technology. The electric Rolodex was something else. It was the standard Rolodex fitted with a small motor that would spin the cards automatically to whichever letter you selected.
And didn't
because
work right half the
apparently
time.
the effort of spinning a Rolodex by hand was a problem that needed solving. The electric Rolodex arrived in offices around 1980 and was received with the kind of enthusiasm
That's just a
that greets
secure
any new office technology.
Rolodex.
Cautious at first,
Not
then
a
adopted,
electric,
then
just
taken for
secured.
granted. The motor made a small whirring sound, the cards flew past, you pressed the button for M, and the machine spun to M, and there was the number you needed. When computers came into offices and contact databases replaced physical card files, the Rolodex became obsolete overnight, the electric one especially, a motor in service of a system that no longer existed. Most of them went into storage closets. A few ended up in antique stores, where they sit now, next to other optimistic machines that solved problems that no longer exist. Number 20 was the bread machine.
I still have
The bread
mine,
machine
still
arrived
use
in
it.
American kitchens in the mid-1980s with the confidence of something that had solved a problem everyone had. You
No.
poured in the flour and the yeast and the water and the salt, you pressed a button, and 3 hours later you had a loaf of bread. A
Yeah.
slightly awkward loaf.
3 hours later, for one loaf of bread, when for the same amount of time you can get 2 loaves out of the regular oven.
You had made yourself, more or less. The smell was the best part. The smell of bread baking is one of the oldest comforts
Yeah,
there
the
is,
only
and the bread machine produced
plus
it in your
for
kitchen
using the
on a
bread
Tuesday
machine
afternoon without asking
is
very
you
much
could
of
load
it.
everything in the
It
night
came up with
before,
milk, and the
set
bread
the
was ready.
timer,
The whole
and when you
house
get up in the
smelled
morning, you'd
good.
have
The bread
fresh
machine had a
bread in the
timer
morning.
you could set overnight.
See?
You did this at least once and woke to the smell of fresh bread at 7 in the morning, and for one brief, perfect moment before the day started, everything felt taken care of. The bread was ready. Someone had seen to it.
My
The
uncle used
machines
to
fell
do
out
that
of fashion
all
in
the time.
1990s when everyone
The
discovered
hell they did.
sourdough and artisan baking and decided that process
You
mattered
can-
more than convenience. Bread machine
You can make
disappointed.
sourdough in a bread machine,
Was right. Number 21 was the food dehydrator. The food
but you can
dehydrator
still buy
was a
those today.
circular tower of plastic trays through which warm
They're just
air
not
circulated
circular anymore.
slowly, removing moisture from whatever you had arranged on the trays. Fruit slices, vegetable pieces, meat for jerky. It made a low, constant hum and took anywhere from 4 to 12 hours to produce a finished result. It was the kind of appliance that required commitment. You made beef jerky, you made apple chips, you made banana chips and pineapple rings, and something with zucchini that didn't work as well as you hoped. The dehydrator sat on the counter for several months, and then moved to the cabinet, and then moved to the garage, and then moved to the donation pile. The people who loved their food dehydrators loved them the way dedicated people love dedicated appliances, completely, stubbornly, and with a slight defensiveness in the face of skepticism. They're still out there. They know who they are. Number 22 was the electric pencil sharpener.
Yep.
The electric pencil sharpener was mounted on a wall.
Never
sat
saw
on a
one
desk,
mounted to a wall.
consumed
Ever.
pencils at a rate that seemed almost aggressive. You inserted the pencil and the machine whirred, and in 5 seconds you withdrew the pencil, now sharpened to a perfect point.
And now
You
the
also
3-inch
used it
stub,
very frequently.
1.5-inch stub.
Was now 3 inches shorter than it had been because the machine had kept grinding even after the point was
They're
ready.
hungry little beasts.
Children loved
They're like a
the electric
piranha.
pencil sharpener, the way children love any machine that does a familiar task faster.
And that one's not
and
mounted
better than a
correctly.
hand tool. At school, it was mounted near the door and required permission permission to use, which made it even more desirable. The sound of it
That's
was
a manual
distinctive, a
pencil
winding
sharpener,
electric
wall
buzz
mounted,
that announced to
and
the
the
entire classroom
little
that
brown
someone's
part
pencil
there
needed
needs to
attention.
be turned.
The electric pencil sharpener is still technically available, but the pencil itself has faded from most daily lives. In the offices and classrooms of the 1970s and 1980s, the sharpener was constant, necessary, unremarkable.
Well, in the
One of those
80s
small
is when
machines
we
whose
all started
presence
using
you only
mechanical
noticed when
pencils.
it was
So you
gone.
didn't have to get up to sharpen it all the time.
Number
Just
23
click the button and
was
get
the
fresh lead.
cassette tape rewinder.
And that
The
is a
cassette tape
video
rewinder
cassette
was a device
rewinder.
so specific to its moment that it barely needs explaining to anyone who lived through it, and is nearly inexplicable to anyone who didn't. Rewinding a cassette tape in a tape player wore out the player's motor.
Bull.
So someone invented a separate device,
And
battery
that
powered,
is
into which you inserted the cassette and it rewound the tape for you,
completely
sparing
different
your
type of
Walkman
cassette.
or your car stereo the mechanical effort. The rewinder was usually shaped like a small car or a race car, or something else designed to make the process seem more enjoyable than it was.
Those
You
were for
placed the tape,
videotapes,
pressed a button,
not
and
audio
the tiny
cassettes.
motor whirred the reels back to the beginning. 20 seconds. Done. This was a solution to a problem that itself was a solution to a problem that no longer exists. The cassette is gone. The rewinder is a curiosity now, a tiny machine in a box in an attic that prompts the question, what did this do exactly? Everything. It did exactly what you needed it to do. Number 24
Not everything.
was the hot comb. The hot comb was a metal comb with a heating element built into the handle, used to straighten and style hair quickly without a full salon
See,
visit.
now that one,
Plugged into the wall
that
with
one
a
there
and you ran it
is
through
for,
sections of hair while it was warm.
yeah, there.
It smelled
That
like
was
seeds
for
of
women.
hair, and whatever
The
styling product
hot
you had
comb
used,
for
and the
men
combination
was a blow
particularly
dryer with a comb
unstable.
attachment, so it was
Your
actually
mother
blowing
used one, or
hot
you
air
used one,
as
standing
you
in the
combed
bathroom
your hair
mirror
out,
in the early morning,
and
working section
that was the
by
men's
section,
version.
with a patience and skill that looked effortless because she had been doing it since she was a girl. The technique was passed down without being formally taught. You watched. You learned by watching. The hot comb gave way to the curling iron and the flat iron, and eventually to devices so technically sophisticated that earlier generations would not have recognized them as belonging to the same category of tool. But the hot comb, the original, the simple metal teeth heating up in your hand, that belonged to a specific intimacy, a specific morning, a specific woman in a specific mirror getting ready for a specific day. Number 25 was the electric blanket.
Still
The
have used
electric
mine. In fact, just
blanket was
bought
one of the
mine
genuine
last
comforts of the
winter,
1970s
and
and 80s. A blanket
I don't know
threaded
what
with
I would do
heated
without
wires
it.
and controlled by a dial on the cord. A small plastic box you kept on the nightstand with settings
That is
from
not
1
something
to
that
10.
ever went away.
In winter, you turned it to 7
It's still
or 8
used.
before you got into bed.
In fact, I also
and
have
slid
a
under and felt the
electric
warmth
throw
fall
blanket
into your feet,
for when I'm
which was the warmth
sitting in
you'd
a
been
chair.
looking for since October. There were 2 control electric blankets for couples, each side with its own dial, because temperature is one of the great irreconcilable differences in marriage. One person wants 7, one person wants 3. The 2 control blanket was a peace treaty. Most marriages needed it. The electric blankets of that era had a slight smell when they were new, something like warm plastic
Anything
or
electric
fabric
does.
softener that was specific enough that remembering it is almost the same as being under one again. Your grandmother had one on her guest bed. It was already warm when you climbed in, and it stayed warm all night, and you slept the way you only sleep in a place where someone has taken care of the temperature on your behalf. Number 26 was the pocket calculator watch.
That's
In
not
the early
pocket.
1980s,
That's
someone looked at
wrist.
a digital watch and thought, this could do more.
That is a
The
wrist
result was a
calculator.
watch, a wristwatch with a small keyboard across the bottom of the face with buttons so small they required a stylus or the very tip of a fingernail to press. You could
Or
calculate
the end of your
things from your wrist.
pencil or
You
pen.
could calculate things while walking. You could calculate things in a restaurant without pulling anything out of your pocket. The people who loved the calculator watch loved it with a specific enthusiasm that other people found charming and a little puzzling. The calculator watch was not a fashion statement. The calculator watch was a mission statement. It said, I value function. I value efficiency. I value being prepared to calculate something at any moment. The calculator watch belongs to a very specific kind of person from the early 1980s, and that person knows who they are, and they probably still have the watch somewhere, and the battery is dead, and they have not thrown it away. Number 27 was the car tape adapter. When cars still had cassette players and you wanted to play music from a newer device, a Discman, then an early MP3 player, you used a tape adapter. It was a blank cassette shell with a thin wire coming out of the end that connected to the headphone jack of your device. You inserted it into the tape player like a regular cassette, and the sound came through your car speakers. The tape adapter was a bridge between eras. It acknowledged that things were changing while finding a way to use what you already had. It was not elegant. The wire dangled, the wire got tangled, the connection crackled sometimes, but the music came through, and you were driving, and the music coming through an imperfect wire is still music. When car stereos got CD players, the tape adapter became obsolete. When cars got auxiliary jacks, the adapter became a relic. Now cars connect to phones wirelessly, and the adapter is a museum piece. But the problem it solved was
It doesn't.
real.
I still got to use the auxiliary cable.
Ingenious, and there is something quietly
At least
wonderful
until I can get a
about
Bluetooth
device that
adapter
made
to plug
two
in there.
incompatible things speak to each other. Number 28 was the VCR clock. This is not the VCR itself.
This one is
This is
stupid.
the clock on the VCR.
Which was
The
so
digital
easy to
display
set.
at the front of every VCR in
Just
America.
two
blinked
buttons right
12
there.
o'clock in red from the moment it
Push
was
one to
plugged in
advance the
until
hour,
the day
push
it
the other
left
one to
the
advance
house,
the minutes.
because nobody ever
Could it be any
figured out how
simpler?
to set it, and
Everybody knew how to set
try.
it.
The 12 o'clock VCR clock is one of the most universal shared experiences of American life in the
Bullshit.
1980s. It blinked in every living room.
Nope.
In nice houses and modest houses, and in the houses of people who were otherwise perfectly competent at operating technology. The
Lies.
instructions were in the manual. The manual was in a drawer. The drawer was never opened. The 12 o'clock was not a failure of intelligence.
Yes, it
was a
was.
statement of priorities.
No, it just means you're
recorded
lazy.
shows. The VCR played your movies. The VCR's clock did not matter.
Yes, it
The
did.
clock on the microwave
Without the
also
clock,
blinked 12
if you did
o'clock.
not have that clock
This,
set,
too,
you
was
could not
considered a
program it to
choice.
record your
If
shows.
father set the VCR clock, you remember it. It was an event. It was announced. It was completed with the satisfaction of someone who had done something the rest of the household had declined to attempt. Number 29 was the boombox. The boombox was not subtle.
VCR
The
clock was
boombox
easier to
was a
set than the
portable
clock
stereo
in a
cassette
car.
player the size of a small suitcase, carried on one shoulder, with speakers large enough to fill a room or a parking lot or a public park, depending on
I
where
miss
you
my
had
boombox.
decided to take your music that afternoon. The boombox was freedom in a
I
carrier.
had the big old
It
Panasonic.
meant music anywhere. It meant your music, chosen by you, played by you, at a volume you decided. Not the radio's volume, not whoever owned the house's volume, but yours. You carried it to the beach, you carried it to the backyard, you set it on the steps of an apartment building on a summer evening, and the whole block heard what you were listening to, and some of them didn't mind at all. The batteries. The boombox required an unreasonable number of D batteries and consumed them
Usually
at
about
an
6 to
unreasonable
8.
rate, and the sound degraded as the batteries drained, getting slightly slower and slightly lower until someone ran out to the drugstore for more. You always had D batteries. You always needed more. The boombox is technically still available. A few versions exist, but the original, the enormous, heavy, two-speaker tape-playing boombox of 1979 through 1987, that belonged to a particular attitude toward music and space and the right to be heard. Some things should not be made smaller. The boombox was one of them. Number 30 was the home movie projector.
Yep.
Before the VCR and the home video camera,
Eight
there was the
millimeter,
Super 8 film camera and
Super
its
8.
companion, the home movie projector. You shot film, actual film in small reels on family vacations and at birthday parties and on Christmas morning and at the backyard on an ordinary summer Sunday because the light was good.
And they were
and
all
the children
silent
were
pictures.
there, and something in you knew that ordinary days were worth saving. The projector came out for special occasions. You set up the screen, the same white screen with the same slight lean, and you loaded the reel and turned off the lights, and the projector made its particular sound, a clicking, slightly mechanical whir, like a small engine running quietly at the back of the room. And then the image appeared. The images were silent. Home movies of that era had no sound, and the silence was its own kind of gift.
No audio
You
track
watched
on
your
those.
father laughing without hearing the laugh. You watched your mother carrying something across the yard without hearing her footsteps. The silence made you lean in. The silence made you pay attention in a different way. Your grandmother at a picnic table, not looking at the camera, reaching for something off to the side. Your grandfather walking toward the lens, squinting against the sun, raising one hand in a wave that was meant for the person behind the camera, which was you, which is to say it was meant for you now, watching it 40 years later in a different house, in a different life, the reel spinning quietly in the dark. The projector clicked to the end of the reel, and the white light stayed on the screen, and the room came back slowly. They came and they went.
Oh,
Some of them
yes.
lasted 5 years. Some of them lasted 2.
Most
Some of them
indestructible
were with
phone
you for a
ever
single
made.
summer
The
before
Nokia
they
candy
ended up in
bar.
a drawer that you never quite got around to
You could
cleaning out.
run those things
You
over
didn't
with the
know
car,
when you brought them
and they would
home that they were
still
temporary.
work no
You
problem.
didn't know that the world would move on and leave them behind. You brought them home because they promised
Let's
something.
see.
Efficiency,
A couple
ease,
of,
connection, entertainment,
what was that
the
Apple
feeling of
called?
living in the
iPods.
future.
A couple of
And
iPods
for a
there.
while, for exactly as long as they lasted, they
Two other
delivered.
MP3
The
players.
fondue pot on a Friday night with people you loved around a table.
Of
The
course, a
boom
couple of digital
box on a
cameras
summer
up there too.
afternoon. The Polaroid developing in your hand. The bread machine filling the kitchen with something warm at 7 in the morning. They weren't just objects. They were the way you lived. They were the shape of the hours. They were what Tuesday evening looked like when everything was working right and the house smelled the way it was supposed to smell and everyone was where they were supposed to be. The things you own become the story of who you were. Not the expensive things, not the things that lasted, the things that came and went, the things that tried, the things the world moved on from before you were ready to let them go. Somewhere in a drawer, somewhere in a closet, somewhere in a box in a garage in a house that might not even be yours anymore, one of these things is still waiting. You knew exactly what it was when you saw it. You still do.
I'll say one thing. That was one very well organized attic right there. So, anyways, what do you do here? Okay, turn that off. So that was my first reaction video. Be looking for more. There's so much stuff out there like this, where they go on about objects and items and stuff from the mid to late 20th century, and a lot of it they get so wrong, so terribly wrong. And of course, the AI that they use to narrate these things half the time can't pronounce things correctly. So I'm here to correct them, to set the record straight. So be back, like, subscribe, follow, whatever it is on the service that you're on. I'll be uploading this to YouTube here in just a second, but I do these live on Twitch, so you're always welcome when I go live to come into the chat room and interact with me while I'm doing this. I'd like to know if you remember any of these. Let me know in the comments below. I know you're not supposed to read the comments on social media, but I do. I really do. I try and hold my tongue on some of them, but I still read the comments. So let me know what you think. And if there's a particular one that you think I should do a review and react to, let me know, and I will try and get to it just as quickly as I can. But like I said, hit that like, hit the subscribe, hit the follow, whatever it is. And of course, if you like it and want to help me continue doing these, then yeah, you can send tips in any of these web methods right here. I make a little bit off of the uh, ads that are shown during the live stream um, on Twitch, but it's not enough to be able to keep the internet going and other such things. So, anyways, until next time, peace out and keep it real.